Color isn't everything in art. It's not the skeletal structure that holds up a piece of work. That belongs to composition and values. But they are the best psychological manipulators, pushing people towards certain motions, pulling them back from others. We see reds and immediately associate them with heat and intensity, action and violence, a giant beware sign scrawled across our retinas. We see blues and the temperature plummets. It's all sea spray and lapping waves, peace and cloudless skies. I think it's rewarding to explore and challenge why a combination of colors plucks certain strings while leaving others dormant. While these ones here make you feel like you're waist-deep in a grassy field, outstretched arms catching the sun, and why others feel like you've been packed into a spacesuit, careening through the black. Speaking of space, this color scheme that I'm showing today is inspired by a video game called Citizen Sleeper. It's a cyberpunk story, and it's not a massive one. There's no heart-pounding quest to save the world. You're not tasked with bringing down evil corporations and ushering peace and prosperity for all. The premise is that you're a tiny individual in a small space station in a big universe, and like everyone else, you're just trying to survive. And the station may be a rat's nest raked over and hollowed out by capitalism, corruption, and just plain bad luck. It's also home. And when a place has seen all the worst that it can, just packed full of it, the good can only float to the top in search of air, making them easier to see. And there is so much good to be found in this station. There's a doctor who straddles the line between the respectful and the underground, dealing in patients and gangs both. There's a girl running a restaurant that's been passed down to her, and she's trying her best to spruce it up. There's a fringe group that farms strange but still edible mushrooms. There's a man with his small daughter squashed into a tiny apartment in a rundown district, and he's overworked and exhausted, and she's too young to understand why that matters. And they don't have much save for what fits between their arms, yet hope and love keeps them going. And when I think of the characters, their chrome spaceships and strange, meaningful lives, I see this magenta. Bright neon colors are nothing new to the cyberpunk aesthetic. They're pretty much a core feature of the genre. But there was something new and special about this ocean of magenta, something powerfully quiet and intimate in the way it brackets the neutral greens and blues. Lonely, aching, wild, an otherworldly brilliance amidst such grounded human problems. An extraordinary, beautiful thing coexisting with the ordinary, beautiful hardships. I couldn't get it out of my head. And that's what I mean when I say colors haunt me. They fill those spaces that can't be filled with lines and values alone. A series of encrypted code that we often can't solve or explain, but we don't need explanations to know that a thing makes our heart beat. So with palettes, I find a lot of inspiration in games, especially smaller indie games, which is where visual and narrative creativity is really allowed to flourish, where the visual aesthetic is so deeply intertwined with the story it's trying to tell. But other times it's a lot simpler than that, more irreverent. Like I would see a box of tissues at a doctor's office with a color scheme that I really like. So far, I've avoided awkward confrontations with the receptionists about taking pictures of their office decor. Or there's a new duck at the lake with cool-looking feathers, because I've somehow become one of those people who go to the park every day to catalog each bird that comes through the place. I'm using all mgram for this, just to make my life a little easier. Sometimes I have the patience for digging into paints like Winsor Newton that try hard and fast, but not today. So these are the colors that I mostly settled on. Permanent alizarin crimson, quinacridone rose, phthalo green, indanthrone blue, a bit of sap green in places, and Payne's gray. Oh, and some white gouache. Writing down the names of the colors I use for an experimentation like this or full paintings is something I found myself doing early on. Because I would work on a painting, leave it for a few weeks, months, and come back to it having completely forgotten what colors I had mixed. So I got into the habit of writing them down on the back of the painting or in my notebooks. It's something I recommend for everyone, especially if you're doing watercolor. Watercolor is a medium that often feels very scattered and wild, and a painting session can pass like a fever dream. It can make it overwhelming, like you're not really progressing in any direction. So for me, notes like this is one way of constraining all that noise and making it more manageable, demystifying the process into stepping stones I can build on. Plus, I just enjoy note-taking in general. An idea doesn't seem real or permanent until I have it down on paper, even just a fragment of a thought. Which is ironic because there's nothing permanent about paper with scribbles that I can set fire to. But that's a topic for a whole separate video. I'm on a big mushroom kick lately, even beyond the game, which does feature a good amount of mushrooms. So for these colorful mushrooms, I'm keeping the theme of neutrals surrounded by bright, vivid reds. I've mixed the reds, the permanent alizarin crimson and quinacridone rose, along with the green and the blue to get the various neutrals. I also added white gouache to the mix for the added opacity. I love sci-fi stories. That's, wow, a big surprise here. I love all speculative media that makes us wonder what could lie beyond this little spinning globe of life. All the worlds that could be adjacent to our own. Just even beyond aliens. Just the concept of creatures that communicate in different ways. Just a whole new map of organic matter that we can't find here. And then I come across articles about new deep-sea finds and pictures of fungi, like this, that are just splashed with color and seemingly planned symmetry. And I'm like, okay. And I'm reminded that there is still a good percentage of this Earth we know nothing about. And on one hand, it's scary, because the unknowns will always inspire a bit of fear in all of us. It's just how we're built. And on the other, just absolutely thrilling. So while it's always good to dream up stars, I think it's also prudent to remember that there are wonders far, far closer to home. For this ruffled fan mushroom, it's very accurate and scientific name. I'm leaning more into the blues, so there's more of the blue and the green in the mixture than the red. For the inner part of the mushroom, I'm applying the paint wet on wet. So with the first layer, I wet the paper, wait for the water to dry a little, and then dive in with a loaded brush. I'm keeping this layer relatively bright, because I want the blue-green to show through the subsequent layers. Afterwards, I apply a darker mixture, combining all the paint I have on my palette. I'm not looking for details in this area. We're keeping it abstract and soft, just letting the paint merge and flow. The stem is where I'm adding more texture in the form of dry brushing, so lots of hard edges and visible brush marks. Now we're adding a segmented red background because why not? We're having fun with it. We're all about throwing new things at the paper and seeing what sticks. It's easier to get very dark very quickly with mgram if you're not careful and paying close attention, which is kind of what ended up happening here. So I pulled all the way back and tried to keep things lighter for the next part in this little spread, collage, which are surprisingly not mushrooms, but fish. This is permanent alizarin crimson, muted considerably with phthalo green and indanthrone blue, plus a fair amount of gouache. There's nothing like listing out a bunch of paint names for a tongue twister to start your day. You should try it. the fish, I was pleasantly surprised by, well, how pleasing the colors turned out. Just very pretty, laid-back vibes. So I'm planning on taking it, both the colors and the fish, and using it for larger paintings. And that's what my color experimentation sessions are meant for. Figuring out the right mixes, experimenting with different ratios, basking in and examining the shifts in emotions, and applying that to my art moving forward. For the last part, I'm adding highlights and fun markings with color pencils. The lines for the mushrooms and also the scales of the fish. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you haven't already, click that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell to see more colorful videos like this in the future. Take care of yourself, take care of your box of sheep, and I'll see you in the next one.